Hi, everyone. First, thanks to Jeff and the team for continually bringing folks together to talk about the challenges and opportunities in Canada's bioeconomy. It's really a great opportunity to engage. And just like to say how happy I am to be here on the traditional unceded territory of the Anishinaabe people. The purpose of the session today is to demonstrate how international collaboration can support the scaling up and commercialization of biorefineries. It's also an opportunity to showcase some of the recent work that took place under the Integrated Biorefineries Mission. To give you an idea of what you can expect from our session, I'll first provide a brief overview of the mission and then give the floor to our esteemed panelists to each present on their recent activities in the field of biorefining and sustainable aviation fuel. And it's a great panel. So first we're going to hear from Dr. Benali Marzouk. Dr. Marzouk is a senior research scientist and has been a research manager of the biorefinery hydrogen clean fuels team at CanmetENERGY Research Centre of Natural Resources Canada since 1992. And then the next speaker will be Michael Hecquet, the lead for the Advanced Fuels Research and Development Program for TotalEnergies. He's also the specialist for Total in the field of biomass and waste conversion and the associated value chain. And the final speaker is Don Roberts, President and CEO of Nawitka Capital Advisors Limited, an investment banking and advisory boutique focused on creating a circular economy. He has over 40 years' experience as a financial services executive, investment banker, and equity professional, and he is one of my favorite speakers in the entire world, so no pressure, Don. We'll then conclude the session with a short moderated discussion during which the speakers will be able to provide further insights on these topics. Given the amount of time planned for the session, we will not be taking questions from the audience after the speakers' presentations, but I would encourage you to connect with them before leaving the venue this afternoon if you want to learn more about their work and insights. So I'm going to kick things off by presenting briefly on the Integrated Biorefineries Mission under Mission Innovation. And we'll see if I can actually work this. Haha, success. Okay, so for those who aren't aware, Mission Innovation is a global coalition of 23 governments to catalyze action and investment in research, development, and demonstration in clean energy. The initiative emerged from the 2015 Paris Accord to complement efforts to reduce emissions by driving innovation and investment in technologies identified as necessary for the transition to a net zero economy. Mission Innovation consists of 7 public-private missions focused on shipping, power, urban transitions, industry, hydrogen, carbon dioxide removal, and biorefineries. As one of 7 of these missions, the Integrated Biorefineries Mission was launched in 2022 in India. The goal of the mission is to develop and demonstrate innovative solutions to accelerate the commercialization of integrated biorefineries to support the production of sustainable fuels, chemicals, and materials. The mission seeks to advance this goal across 3 areas: R&D, pilots and demos, and policy and regulations. The mission is co-led by the Netherlands and India and includes support from Canada, Brazil, the UK, the European Commission, and as of this summer, Switzerland. The mission also works closely with the Clean Energy Ministerial Biofutures Platform, which Gerard Ostheimer spoke about briefly yesterday, and the IEA Bioenergy Technical Collaboration Program. Since 2022, the Integrated Biorefineries Mission has been consulting with domestic stakeholders to inform the development of the mission's work plan and innovation roadmap, organizing information webinars and trade missions between countries, and holding events at large international fora, such as the annual Clean Energy and Mission Innovation Ministerial. More recently, the mission has continued similar work while also launching its community network to support collaboration between researchers, investors, and thought leaders, and supporting networking and consortia building for Horizon Europe, biorefining funding calls that opened this past September. The mission is looking to continue much of this work in 2025, and Dr. Marzouk will speak to one such project he has been working on with colleagues from Brazil. So with that, I'll now hand over the stage to Dr. Marzouk.
Thank you, Glenn, for this introduction, and thank you, Jeff, for this fantastic conference. I'm pleased to be here today with you. As Glenn said, my role here is to share an experience on the role of international collaboration to develop harmonized methodologies for the this is the button. Yeah, to develop harmonized methodologies to assess the techno-economics and carbon intensity. Since yesterday, we have touched the importance of harmonization of terms, definitions, and methodologies. And today, we spoke a lot on the carbon intensity, and we touched a little bit the carbon circularity and sustainability 1 hour ago. And I will be focusing on the critical challenges. When we set this initiative, we faced, of course, some critical challenges to develop such harmonized framework, because mainly of the feedstock differences between Canada and Brazil. We are dealing mainly with the forestry residues, while the Brazilians are mainly using sugarcane residues, which differ from the chemical composition perspective as well as elementary composition. You will see it later, the impact of these variabilities. And of course, in terms of jurisdictions, we have differences in jurisdictions, along with the Canadian differences in terms of jurisdictions between provinces and federal. And we flagged some critical gaps in terms of the quality of the data that are available. And the fourth point is a little bit linked with the second one on the policy misalignment. This is a big challenge, actually, when defining when accounting for carbon. And more importantly, we faced some economic barriers that we are trying to mitigate through these joint efforts. And to address these harmonizing challenges, we set a methodology based on first set common system boundaries. This is very important. Our approach is driven by system thinking, and also we had to align the life cycle assessment methodologies and the key assumptions to do so, as well as aligning the thermoeconomic assessment methodology / scope. And later on, we formulated the metrics under this framework. And as I said earlier, our approach, of course, from the LCA, it's from cradle to grave. And for Brazilian, we used sugarcane straw, and for Canadian, it's forest residues. And we accounted only for the recovery of residues and their transportation to the gate of the biorefineries. And more importantly, the key assumptions that we made are based on the SAF pricing. We had to define a common approach to calculate the SAF pricing, and the project implementation, meaning we had to set common construction period, which was 3 years and 20 years of operations. And of course, we had to make sure that we have common process ramp-up and discount rate. You defined the LCA database for such assessment. And the location-specific parameters. Of course, this is a huge, of huge importance when dealing with such harmonizing methodology. So the selected metrics that we defined for this framework, the first one dealing with thermal efficiency. The second one, which is very, very important, the energy return on investment. On this side, we define two variants. One is based on the total energy input that includes the fossil-based energy and renewable energy. And the second one, we name it energy transition, which is based mainly on the non-renewable energy input. And of course, the minimum selling price, as well as carbon intensity and GHG abatement cost. So the high-level targets here was to produce roughly 200 barrels of SAF, of biosaf per day, which is equivalent of 110 million liters per year. So the carbon intensity fossil jet fuel, it's about 89 grams of CO2 per megajoules. I will go fast on this part. And on the Canadian side, the outcomes were really the thermal energy, thermal efficiency varied from 60 to 60%. And what is very important to mention here, I did not yet include in this slide the Brazilian outcomes, but clearly the minimum selling price is between 1.3 and 1.6. What is very important to mention here is, of course, it's higher than fossil kerosene, but this minimum selling price is based on a non-incentive included, a non-policy instrument. And the same thing for carbon intensity. We did not include any policy instruments. So this is the base case, and GHG abatement costs varied from 270 to 330 US dollar per ton of CO2 equivalent. Now, when looking at these numbers from the Brazilian side, the minimum selling price was as high as $2 US dollar per liter, and the carbon intensity was higher up to 5 grams of CO2 equivalent per megajoule. Why? The why is based on the fact that because they are using sugarcane residues, which is completely different from the first residues in terms of the chemical composition and the carbon content, which required incremental biomass. So, and this had impacted the capex and the opex. So, and clearly the differences in feedstock impacted both the technical performance as well as the economic performance from both sides. And some takeaway messages, I think it's very important to think about the importance of where the biosaf production is located. As you have seen, differences in biomass give differences in terms of techno-economic and carbon intensity metrics. And more importantly, the carbon counting is closely linked to the proximity to biomass sources. And we went through the regional variability in terms of countries, in terms of regions in a given country. And the last one is very, very important. As I mentioned, the carbon footprint, the transportation distance of the biosaf from the Canadian perspective versus Brazilian, completely different. We are typically transporting biosaf through existing pipelines from the existing terminals, and the distance is relatively short, and the carbon footprint is, of course, lower, while Brazilian are covering a distance of roughly 700 kilometers, and they are using heavy trucks. And this is very important, and the economic viability is closely linked with the feedstock cost, as well as the transportation logistics from the upstream to downstream. With that, I thank you, Glenn.
Thank you, Marzouk, and now I'll invite Michael up to the podium.
Good morning. It's a pleasure for me to be here and to present what is doing TotalEnergies in terms of biofuel and especially in SAF. So TotalEnergies is now a multi-energy company. So we switched from Total to TotalEnergies in order to provide energy to our customers worldwide, sustainable energy, affordable energy, with the ambition to meet the net zero ambition by 2050. So to do that, it's mandatory to have a portfolio of energy. So obviously we are oil and gas company, but we are moving to also to electricity, hydrogen, biomass, wind, and solar. And we have to provide a solution according where we are operating to the different market, as you will see later. The solution is not universal, but we have to be online with the market demand and constraints. Sorry, okay. So if you look at that now, the portfolio of the supply from TotalEnergies, we still are oil and gas company, as you can see, but you can see that in the future, the oil production will be reduced. At the same time, the gas production from TotalEnergies will increase. Why? Because the worldwide demand on energy is still increasing, especially in Asia, etc., etc. So if you want to supply energy, you need energy. And natural gas is a way to provide this energy and to mitigate the CO2 emission. Maybe I'm provocating, but natural gas is a better fuel than coal for in terms of CO2 emission. So it's a way also to decarbonize or to limit the CO2 emission. Obviously, if you look, if you consider a fossil fuel, you need also to consider capture and sequestration. And in some sectors, you have also to provide new molecules, and especially for liquids, through biomass, recycling, and hydrogen, and especially electrofuel. So to do that, we have to follow the same strategy we done before on the oil and gas, so provide fully integrated value chain. So it's mandatory. We have to do that from the R&D to business. So in order to identify where are the feedstock, who are the current player, what is the existing ecosystem, what could be the evolution in order to identify synergy with player, and in order also to identify what are the technology to be developed in order to provide this end product to the market. So now we have a focus on biofuel. As mentioned before, we need to provide an answer to the market, and this answer is mostly driven by regulation. If you look at an example of what happened in Europe, the RED II and RED III give you a framework of what you could use as a feedstock, what is eligible as feedstock to produce biofuel, and you have to meet the mandate fixed by the regulation. So the current situation is based on what we call 1G and advanced solution, first advanced solution. So it's based mostly on lipidic feedstock. But you know that the availability will be limited, so we have to anticipate what could be the next step in the coming future with new feedstock. And then you have also new regulations, but you have new feedstock and then new technology to address and to develop. So you have the regulation, you have the market. The market driver today is the SAF. Why? Because you know it's difficult to imagine to substitute kerosene by something else than dropping solution. So SAF is a growing market worldwide. So you have a strong demand, and the SAF is the only way to decarbonize this sector. The issue is the limitation of the feedstock. In Europe, vegetable is banned for SAF. We have the option to use used cooking oil, animal fat, animal grease, tile oil, etc. But it's limited. So what happened next? And this is the role of R&D to define what could be the solution for tomorrow, especially through agri-residue, woody biomass. And based on that, this is the strategy of TotalEnergies on 3 pillars. So the first pillar is today, is the current situation. I mentioned that we will decrease our production of oil. So we decrease the production of oil. We decrease also the quantity of oil refined. That means that oil refinery are closed in Europe. So what do you do with this refinery? You fire workers or you can take the opportunity to retrofit them into biorefinery. So it's what we are doing in Europe. We are shutting down the oil refining, but we are using bio feedstock in order to switch to biorefinery. Another option also to minimize the cost, to mitigate this cost, is also to use co-processing. As you refine less oil, you can have hydraulic capacity to inject also lipidic feedstock in your asset. So it's a quick win situation to produce biofuel at lower cost. This is an example of biorefinery we had in south of France, in La Mède. We shut down the oil refining a few years ago, and now is 500,000 product from bio-lipidic feedstock. And we develop and we enhance this concept by producing low carbon hydrogen through steam reforming of LPG coming from this unit, from hydrogen electrolyzer, etc. So this is the concept. Tomorrow we will start the Grand Puy Gargenville biorefinery close to Paris, same approach. So this is a reality today, the production of bio component, especially diesel and kerosene. The second pillar for next step is the alcohol. Alcohol could be considered as a platform molecule. You can be very flexible, very robust. You can address petrochemical, you can address fuel, you can address SAF, marine fuel. So it's also a way to produce alcohol close to the feedstock. And then collect in centralized conversion production center alcohol into a valuable end product. And the last pillar at the R&D level is how we can use solid feedstock like woody biomass to produce drop-in fuel. With the same strategy, again, we have a refinery, how we can now feed this refinery with solid feedstock. So the first approach is to consider liquefaction, so pyrolysis, hydrothermal conversion, having a bio-oil, bio-crude, and develop technology or adapt existing technology and asset to produce end product. And the issue is, again, to adapt this technology, but also having the capacity to valorize each product and co-product in order to find the economics. And at midterm, you could have also gasification opportunity, where is not where you have enough biomass. You can consider a large scale facility like a gasification plant producing one or two products with high selectivity. But that means also capex, high level of capex. We are speaking about $2 billion. To produce 100 kilotons of kerosene per year, so it's a big deal. So you have to manage that, to see in which condition it's possible, where you can implement this biorefinery, etc. So the last point, saying that you need to anticipate what could be the most robust business case tomorrow, and then develop the technology. And develop the technology means partnership with third party, with partners, etc. And this is two examples of technology developed in collaboration by TotalEnergies. So future project with 2G ethanol and biofuel converting woody biomass into SAF. So now this technology is on the market, and we are expecting FID soon for different projects. Thank you.
Merci, Michael. And now I'll invite Don to the podium.
Thanks very much. So we're going to focus from the broad to the narrow here. We're going to look at biocrude to SAF. So it's a narrow perspective, but that's the hardest to abate sector. That's why we're focusing on it. First of all, there's lots of different pathways. There really are. If you look at it, you know, just the ASTM approved to date, there's about 10 pathways. Some of them well-established. They're TRL9 and going flat out. Essentially lipid-based HEFA, that's dominating and will for some time. Then you get into some others, you know, things like the alcohol to jet. We're seeing LanzaJet's Freedom Pines project just opened earlier this year. TRL-8, not proven yet, still only 10 million gallons, but it can be done. Gasification to Fischer-Tropsch. Problem is, huge number of variations. Each of them has to be tailored to to the different type of biomass. Gasification technologies range a lot. Fischer-Tropsch, not just expensive, real expensive. Fulcrum had their first plant just started up in Nevada last year, and they closed in May. Didn't work well. Series of issues technically. I would also argue economically. Power to jet. Lots of people excited about that, especially long-term folks. At best, TRL 6 to 7, because you've got to focus on what is the step which is most difficult and least advanced, and that's probably the reverse water gas shift reaction there. Then you've got things like catalytic hydrothermolysis, TRL 6, and then you've got some co-processing one, both lipids and then cellulosic. So that's sort of the landscape. When you look at biocrude, though, at least those that we focus on, you focus on some specific pathways. And it's really the gasification Fischer-Tropsch, it's the alcohol to jet, it's the catalytic hydrothermolysis, and it's the co-processing. Those are the ones that are on the table, at least that we're looking at. You know, again, the lipids, they're here. Issue is sustainable growth. That's a concern. Won't debate it much longer. On the co-processing, clearly, especially on the cellulosic-based biocrudes, there's advantages on the CapEx, the OpEx, especially compared to the freestanding biorefineries. It's already in commercial production, at least in one place, continuous production. It's Pyrocell, it's the Preem Cetra JV. Is it making money? Not clear. Not clear. But they're running, technically. The key barrier to really getting in North America, I would argue, the commercialization on the co-processing is really, it's a regulatory issue. And it gets on how we trace and track these green molecules. It's arguably less technical. It's just a regulatory. And how do we monetize it? How do we actually make money from this? Okay, why focus on the biocrudes? Well, our thought process is that start from the basics. Economies of scale are key. It's got to be big. You got to drive down unit costs to be competitive. And you can do it in some of the pathways, I think, with HEFA and arguably alcohol to jet over time. The problem when you deal with cellulosic is that biomass has some real problems, folks. It does. It's just too low an energy density, and it's a lot of hassle to move the darn stuff. So if you want scale, you've got to find a way to densify it. Well, that's what we try to focus on. How do you densify it? And especially you can do it in a solid, but even better, a liquid when you get into the upscaling. Who are the two leading producers of biocrude in the world? Well, it's Ensign and the fast pyrolysis. They've got the biggest plant and the most of them. And then on the hydrothermal liquefaction, it's the Lysella and Arbius. So those are two. And at this point, I want to get some disclosure. I'm the lead independent director on Ensign, and I'm chairman of the board of Arbius. But I'm not speaking on their behalf today. I'm speaking on behalf of an investor. That's the lens that I want to share with you today. So what are these folks doing, the two leaders in the mainstreams in biocrude? Well, Ensign, first of all, it's been around a long time, over 40 years. Their most recent plant that was commissioned with their technologies in Court Norton, Quebec, 10 million gallons, is now, had some, I would say, teething issues initially, running now, flat out. You've got offtake, it's making money. They've had 10 commercial RTP facilities commissioned over time, and a lot of them have been, in sort of the specialty chemical area. So that's historically what Ensign has been doing. What is in the pipeline, though, to get some scale? Because what matters is, again, volumes here. So the first one is they've got a joint venture in the US for all the development with a group called Castle Rock. So they've got a 20 million gallon per year plant, which is under the feed right now. FID Q2 of next year. They've already got the development capital. That's usually the real problem in these. They've secured it. and they're moving. So Q2 of next year, 40 million gallons. That market will be focusing not on SAF, first of all showing you can do this at scale biocrude. That's going to be renewable fuel oil and the heating fuel market. So you can do it. Second project is alluded to by actually Rod Badcock earlier. We're looking at is in Nova Scotia. It's a 10 million gallon, essentially just the same thing that we just saw at Côte Nord. So minimal technology risk. And that's looking to get it off the ground. And then lastly, there's the third one in Minnesota. So there's some things in the pipeline. Okay, well, that's fine. That's biocrude. You're not doing the upgrading yet. So what about the upgrading? Well, there's a couple of pathways you can do. One of them is co-processing in the FCC units. That, again, as we mentioned before, that can be done. And we're seeing it already over in Scandinavia. The second is to look at this notion of, okay, I've got this biocrude. Let's now try to look at the gasification of it. And there's, again, lots of different ways you can do it. But the one that is most interesting, at least that's been worked on the most with Ensign, has been Linde's technology, and I'll talk about that in a moment. But this is really key because this will now allow one to get into a syngas form where you can more easily do the upgrading. And from there you can do SAF, whether it's through a Fischer-Tropsch or an alcohol to jet. And the third one, which I kind of say sheepishly a little, is that there's carbon sequestration of it. Given the 45Q regulation in the state under the IRA, they're actually putting some down to the states and sequestering it underground. You make a lot of money at it. It's regulatory risk. But the main thing that's really coming out of there will be for industrial heat applications. And they've got that with ArcelorMittal already, with Côte Nord, and then they're looking at, as Rod had mentioned, in Nova Scotia, that's under the Viterra banner, by the way, with Michelin. Okay, so there's various pathways, ways to do some upgrading. And I want to take a second here again, this whole notion that we've had the ability to gasify and go up to SAF before the Fischer-Tropsch and so forth, but it's really difficult to gasify biomass, solid biomass. It's tough. But once you get into liquid form, you could do it a lot easier. And that's why, again, this focus on Linde, who's done a fair number of trials on it, feeling good in terms of the yields, especially, that's critical, as well as the synfuel killing it. You got those two, and then you can start moving to the next step. But what's interesting is this now allows you to separate and get scale. And that's one of the things we're driving at here. And so what allows you is that geographic flexibility to decouple where your feedstock is at from your syngas production. That's key. That allows you to then get some easier transport of whatever that product is. Maybe it's the ethanol or methanol that comes out over to the SAF location. It also gives optimal siting of the plants because it's not just, you know, where the fiber is, but that best economic and regulatory environment that you're focusing on, and to reduce power costs. Oh, and by the way, I also would like some access to networks and oxygen and hydrogen. So it allows us to sort of decouple and get scale. You're talking towards a hub and spoke model. That's really what you're focusing on here. And our argument, that's got to be key if we're going to get the lignocellulosic as the feedstock. Okay, that's what Ensign's doing. The second one, more on the west side of the country, is Arbius. This is a joint venture between Canfor, the large forest products company, and Licella, the Australian technology company. This is a project which is starting up as we speak. First oil, hopefully, this month. And so this is just a picture of what's going on. We're construction complete. It's smaller than the Côte Nord. It's about 20% of the size. In fact, it's only about 50,000 barrels a year on it. This plan here to de-risk the technology is do it in multiple trains. The first train is what we're starting right now. Make sure the darn thing works as you expect. And then what you do is look on the multiple or slightly larger trains down the road. That'll be and that's going to be required to get economies of scale. I'll just jump quickly here. Okay, once you get the biocrude, what's the Lycellus platform to getting it up to SAF? We're really working with Shell through the catalytic hydrothermolysis pathway. Shell will look after the process of getting accredited to the SAF, and that's the platform. What's the bottom line I want to leave you with? Of all the uneconomic SAF technologies available from solid cellulosic biomass, and they're all uneconomic, every one of them, that biocrude is arguably the most commercial ready and the least uneconomic. Now, doesn't that get you excited? What you still requires is you've got to have those right government policies to monetize the climate change mitigation and to really, truly get an economic framework for SAF. And once you do, our assessment is that at all the pathways using this readily available feedstock, that the most cost-effective will be those using biocrude. Thank you.
Glenn, I'm sorry to cut the panel short. I mean, I thank you for setting me up so that people knew that they weren't going to be able to have time to ask questions. But that was a fantastic panel. Thank you all very much for being here. Thank you.